Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you everybody for joining us for the latest webinar, which is best practices and strategies for getting your records on time, what you can do. So whether you use us or another copy service, hopefully these strategies will help you and your staff know what they can do in order to get their records on time. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do some introductions and then we'll hop right into it. So my name is John Blake. I'm Director of Sales at Gemini. I've been in the legal industry for about 30 years, which means I started when I was 6. I've only been in work comp for about a year, which is why I am only qualified to be the MC here. But luckily we have a whole bunch of folks that have been in the industry for a long time, and they're going to be the ones that are sharing their knowledge with you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Richard. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, John. My name is Richard Contreras. I've been employed here at Gemini, holding several different roles, but currently an account manager. I've been with the company for 17 years. And like I said, just have had several different roles within the company, and it's been fun.
He's also on the board for Latino Comp.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So thank you, Richard. Glad to have you. Ashleigh.
Hello, I'm Ashleigh Rivera. I have been at Gemini for 11 years. And I have also been in a few different roles. I'm currently the Director of Operations, and I did start in sales. So I've had direct contact, and I've worked directly with some of our clients. So I've gotten a pretty good insight on how they use their records and what they need and want when it comes to their record retrieval process. And my goal here at Gemini is that when we work with clients, they have the best experience possible, and that they get their records fast, and that they get the highest quality records. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike.
Hello, I'm Mike Wojciechowski. I've been with Gemini for 10 years. I have been in the workers' compensation industry since June of 1991, which puts me at 30 years in this lovely brand of law. For 20 years, I was an adjuster, supervisor, manager on the defense side. 10 years ago, I talked to Dan. He brought me over as an account manager. Then about 4 years after that, he said, look, we're moving everything up here to Rockland. I want you to run my accounts receivable. And haven't looked back since then. We've got accounts receivable. We've got a legal department with 4, possibly 5 paralegals. I'm not totally sure. We do really well here.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. And Richard, the first question is for you. So what are some of the best practices that you've seen at law offices you visit during the intake process that can ensure record requests are complete?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. I would say just making sure that they receive as much complete information as possible during that intake process. So taking a little extra time with that process. This includes getting, I'm going to say getting complete applicant information, right? So you got your applicant name, date of birth, social security, if they have one, but also to include any AKAs, right? This is one that gets missed a lot. If a medical facility has a different name than what was provided to the law office, this is going to create a delay right off the bat, right? So when that happens, we have to contact the law office to confirm the name. Law office usually has to reach out to the injured worker and confirm that information. So AKA is going to be really important when obtaining that information. Number 2, I would say what I find to be helpful is those offices that obtain, 3 or 4 different medical releases. I've seen up to 5. This is it's definitely helpful because you never know. What we see is most offices will get a medical release for standard medical records, a second one for psych records. We're seeing more and more facilities like Stanford that are requiring the psych portion of a medical release to be checked off or initialed to release standard medical records, right? So if your office is not obtaining that during the intake process, then some staff has to at some point reach out to the injured worker, mail it out. A lot of the times I'm hearing that it's getting mailed out, and that can take 2-3 weeks to get that back if they get it back, right? So that's going to create a significant delay. We also see offices getting Kaiser authos signed during the intake process, even if their client didn't treat at Kaiser for the industrial injury. This is helpful for when the defense tries to go digging for pre-existing injuries. If you decide you want a copy of those records, you already have that Kaiser medical release, and it's going to save you that time of having to mail it out and get it later. But it can also be helpful if you're going to later convert that work comp case into an SIF case, right? You already have that author. You can start, subpoenaing records from Kaiser. A lot of people have been treated at Kaiser at one point or another. So something to point out is if you're going to request records out of state facilities don't have to comply with California subpoenas. So it's going to be important that you provide us with a medical release with that order to get those records. So I just want to point that out. The third thing that I think is really important that is helpful is making sure that the law office obtains complete medical location information from the injured worker. And that involves, whoever's doing the intake, prepping the injured worker prior to the intake to say, hey, when you come to this appointment, please have complete medical facility names, addresses, doctors. There's been plenty of times when we'll get a request and it'll just say medical records from Dr. Smith, right? Or Smithson, something along those lines. And right off the bat, we know that that's going to be a delay, right? We got to reach out to the law office to get more information to process that request. So, and then I would say the fourth and final thing I think that's helpful and that is important is when you request an insurance claims file from the carrier, to provide a claim number with that request. 9 out of 10 times, the carrier they won't even talk to us without it. They need that claim number to look up the injured worker's file. So sometimes we can get it with the Social Security number, but most of the time we're going to need that claim number.
Okay, great. Hey, one thing I did want to mention, if you have any questions, there is a tab on the bottom that says Q&A. Stephen, I did see your question there. We will, if we don't answer the question during the webinar, we'll try to answer them at the end. And if we can't, we will try to email you back with an answer to those questions. So feel free to go ahead and type in any questions that you have into that Q&A, and I appreciate it. So Richard, I know that you've been in some pretty efficient offices during your time at Gemini. What are some tips you have to keep offices organized and ensure they get their records on time?
Yeah, so I would say aside from getting complete information, I think what's really important to have is a case management system. Just on a side note, I would say preferably a web-based case management system. We've seen, just with the whole pandemic, we saw that those offices that were on a web-based system were able to manage workflow pretty seamlessly when the pandemic hit versus those that didn't have a system or didn't have a web-based system. We saw that, employees were not comfortable coming into the office working. They just didn't feel safe, right? So that really affected the workflow within an office. So just wanted to put that out there. Web-based case management systems are going to be the best way to go. But the point is that this allows an office to be paperless or even somewhat paperless, right? They can have digital access to documents. If any documentation is needed from the copy service to fulfill that order, it's easily accessible to download and email to your copy service provider. And this is versus locating paper-based files, right? We still see that in offices. paper-based files. I've had several offices tell me that it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 days to locate a file, right? We hope and we pray that it's in the filing cabinet. Most of the time it's not. It could be anywhere in the attorney's office, within the law office, maybe in the attorney's office. I hear that it's maybe in the attorney's car or even the attorney's home, right? These are significant delays that we're going to run into when we need additional information. So good case management system. Number two, I would just say, make sure that your notifications are activated with your copy service, right? This is going to allow you to get order confirmations, delivery confirmations, any orders that are stuck in the pipeline, needing additional information, you'll be notified. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an attorney tell me that he needed records today or maybe tomorrow. He doesn't have them. He reaches out to his copy service provider just to find out some additional information was needed, and he was never notified, right? That's extremely frustrating to the attorney. So making sure those are turned on. Also, we're seeing more and more copy services manage the IMR process for law offices, right? A lot of the times we'll get an IMR application. We'll get that process for the law office, but for whatever reason, we never get the notice of assignment, right? That's an important part of that process. If we don't get that, we don't meet the deadline. So with notifications turned on, your copy service provider should be able to notify you, hey, we have not received this notice of assignment yet. Deadline's coming up. Get this over to us, and we'll get these records uploaded to Maximus. The third thing that I would say is making sure that you get status updates from your copy service. We talked about email notifications. You should have the ability to check status on any request at any given time. And that really shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes to do that, right? I've heard attorneys tell me that whenever they need to get a status, they'll shoot out an email to their copy service provider, their representative, and it can take anywhere from 2 hours to 48 hours to get a response. That's a long time, right? Your copy service provider should have a web portal that you can log into and check status quickly. And I would just say, if it's taking you longer than 2 minutes to get a status on records, well, John, I would just say that that's too long. That's too long.
Yeah. By the way, I've been in a bunch of workers' comp offices, and if any of the work comp offices that are on this call have figured out how to be totally paperless, I've decided that you type your name in the chat, and I'm going to have you do the next webinar because every work comp office.
Yeah. Hey, they're out there.
Well, thanks, Richard. Hey, Mike, next one's for you. What is the minimum amount of time a location has to legally provide records to a copy service?
So Evidence Code 1560 is what governs the timing of when a location has to provide records. And it states that it's 15 days after the receipt of the subpoena by the location. This is called the deposition date or depot date, as it's the lingo that we use here. Time should also be allotted for a mail serve, and generally the depot date is set for 20 days to accommodate this, because the WCB has 5 days for mailing. Some locations, such as Kaiser, will wait the entire 15 days to comply, and others may let the field agent that we have go out and copy the records the same day if we hand serve the subpoenas. So it varies by location. There are also other locations that may just copy and mail them to the copy service prior to the deposition date, or just call and say, hey, they're ready to be picked up, and your copy service will go by and pick them up.
Yeah, actually, just real quick, we had a law office one time where, they called us on a Friday. They needed records on Monday for a hearing that they had coming up. We didn't frequent that area very often. It was in a remote location, and the agent that we had happened to be on vacation. So we tried to get a little creative, called the location, explained the situation. They were willing to accept the subpoena that same day and comply with it that same day. However, they had some technical difficulties trying to get us the file. It was pretty large. So we had to get even more creative. And on Monday, we tried to get that agent out there to the location. He happened to have a flight delayed, so we had to reroute another agent 2 hours out of his normal route to get there. But he was able to get there, get the records physically, and then hand deliver those to the client on time. That is not typical. Like Mike had mentioned, a lot of these locations, they do understand that they have that time frame to get their records to us, and they also have a process to follow internally. So not typical, but it does happen where we can make it happen like that quickly. But they are pretty aware of the timeline that they have too.
Yep. No, I hear you. So, Ashleigh, next one's for you. What are the minimum requirements for a record request to ensure it's processed quickly and without delay?
Sure. So this is going to depend on what type of case and what type of records that you're requesting, but just in general, some basic requirements. I would say first and foremost, the most important thing that we need is the correct user to contact at your law firm. So we understand that case managers might work with several attorneys at your firm, and we need to know exactly who we need to contact if we see that there's going to be a delay or we have any questions about the request. As far as case information, Richard kind of touched on a few of these things, but just making sure we have the case number, making sure we know what case type it is. So if it's workers' comp versus an SIVTF claim, we need to know that. And then any carrier information you might have, including the adjuster's information and the correct claim number and correct date of injury. Another thing to note for applicant information, again, Richard touched on this, but the correct spelling of the applicant's name, a lot of the times we'll see that the spelling's not even correct and the location, wouldn't be able to look that up in their system. Also their date of birth and their social security number. And if you're requesting medical records, then a medical record number for that facility. As far as authorizations, we sometimes don't even get an authorization. So what Richard was talking about, with getting multiple signed up front, that at least ensures that you have something. So making sure that you send those over with your request, and then ensuring that if you are looking for something like protected health information, that's released on the authorization as well. Just to be able to serve the subpoena the first time successfully, having a correct address and location information. We have our own internal research processes that we follow, and we also have a pretty robust database. So locations that we frequent often are no issue for us. We know exactly where to go. We know exactly who to talk to. It's the locations that we maybe have never been to before, like an employer, for example. Those are the ones that we really need your help to get that correct information up front when the order's placed. And then also, your copy service really should be telling you up front what requirements are necessary for when you're placing that request. So you should know up front exactly what's needed.
Good, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm going to throw in just one question to start here. We'll get to some of these other ones in a bit, but I thought this would be an easy one to answer. Question from Stephen Pisano. How long does Gemini keep records accessible online?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been here for 17 years, and as soon as we did that, maybe Ashleigh knows the actual year, but they've been in there since we first started storing them online. They're still there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I'd like to say that they're there forever.
I mean, as long as you need them, they'll be there. That's really what it is. You have your own login to, our account, our Gemiini Docs account. You should be able to log in, and any records that you've ever placed with us should be there.
Yeah, even if it was 10 years ago, they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'll get to some more of the questions in a few minutes. But
okay.
Mike, next one's for you. What are the most common pieces of information missing on defense party notices that are actually needed to process record requests?
Okay, so I think I might be able to answer a question from Stephen when he said Gemini involvement when defendants subpoena docs. So what I'm going to go over is basically a party notice. So party notice is basically the subpoena packet that the subpoenaing party is required to serve on all parties to the case. It will show what locations they are requesting and as well as the depot date. First page of the party notice will indicate that they are requesting records. And if you want a copy, they will normally only give you two options, paper or CD. This is an issue for those firms that are 100% digital. And with COVID, this has become more important than ever with everyone working remotely so they can access their records from their desktop, whether they're home, wherever they're at. And I think the theme you're going to see through all this is what Richard had said earlier. With the more information we have on these, the better. Some defense copy services are better than others when providing the information about a location's address, the facility, the doctor's name, etc. Sometimes a date of birth or social security number is redacted. So if you want to, just write that on the party notice to give to your copy service, however you give it to them. Some people just have a basket at their office. Some people email them. But we need to get the orders in as soon as possible because timing is of the essence for most of these. We have really good specific processes in place through sales, through, basically on down the line. And we do party notice orders all the time. I currently looked at 2020's collection rate, and we collected on 87% of our party notice orders in 2020.
Wow.
So,
and just to clarify, right, Mike, is that's when the defense is ordering records, and then our clients, the applicant on the applicant side, decide to send those to us, right?
yes, the party notices to us, yes.
Gotcha.
Yep. And we do get objections quite often. I mean, we get more objections than we do locations every month. We continue to get paid, so I don't really worry about them that much.
Yep. Yeah. So don't worry about the objections. Keep sending.
And just to point out real quick, I've talked to other, we're friends with other copy services, and I've heard the same thing that they get paid on those as well too. So sometimes the defense does a good job of making the applicant attorney feel like they won't pay it, but from what I hear across the board, yeah, we get paid on those.
Good deal. So, Ashleigh, what are some of the most common issues that cause delays when it comes to processing record requests?
Yeah, so I pulled all of our data from 2020 just to see what what was the most common thing that we saw, and by far inaccurate information up front. So when you're placing the request, either, we've seen that the applicant information is incorrect, or what we talked about, misspelling on an applicant name, the location address is incorrect, anything like that. That's the most common thing that we see. The next most common is a missing 80J case number for a workers' comp case. And at the time that we get the request, we will verify any information we have against EAMS to see if there is a case number. And then we check it pretty regularly. So if we catch it, we will apply it to your request and we'll get it moving as quickly as possible. However, having that up front obviously helps, and it goes a lot smoother. The next most common delay is not having an authorization at all, or it being incorrect. So having the wrong information on it, it's not releasing what you actually are requesting, or just not having one provided up at the front at all. The last most common delay that we saw was just inaccurate claim information. So a lot of the times we see they'll send us, like a law firm will send us multiple. So we'll see multiple dates of injury and then multiple claim numbers, which is fine. But what happens is we have to then call the adjuster and try to sort it out and kind of, get their understanding of, okay, which one do you have? Which one's correct? So it just causes a little bit of delay on that end. So just in general, having the correct information up front and having that quality up front is what we're looking for.
So I would imagine with all the stuff happening with COVID, all of these delays can get multiplied on top of each other, because getting a hold of the right person at the law office, getting a hold of the right person at the insurance company, getting a hold of the right person anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of, we talked about this, and Richard talked about how people are moving from their offices and they're working at home, and it's the same across the board. So anybody that we have to communicate to make sure that the records requests are running smoothly, there can be delays in communication. So that's why those notifications are huge, just to turn those on to see exactly when a delay happens. We'll tell you exactly what it is, what we need, and you should be able to email us right back. You don't have to call us. You don't have to do anything else. Just email it back to us and we'll get it moving. But you're right. I mean, COVID really impacted a lot of communication streams across the board.
I would imagine. All right. Next one goes to you, Mike. When it comes to SIBTF requests, what are some of the best practices for ordering to ensure timely but complete records?
Well, one of the bigger issues that we have that really stalls the order is some offices are requesting a blanket amount of time for records. So normally this is from the date of birth up through the date of injury, or maybe even longer, up till the date we issue the subpoena, because they want to get all the information that they can. This is especially troublesome on out-of-state orders. They are not bound by the evidence code in California for release of information, or what we call ROI fees. And this is the fee that we have to pay to the location to release the records. So it's pretty loose with what they can request as a fee. And under the fee schedule, we can only bill $180 for the records. And the ROI fee is also included in that. So the copy service may have to pay $1,000 fee to get the records, but they still can only bill SIBTF $180. So if we can lower the time window to specific dates, this would make it easier to get our records faster and to basically ensure that we're getting everything that we need, but not more than we need. And the last thing is, if you're requesting a previous claim file or attorney file, make sure you're only requesting the medical portion of the file, because if you request the claim file, you're going to get billing, you're going to get benefit printouts, all that stuff. And I'm not sure if that's necessary in an SIBTF case. Again, I'm not an expert, but also part of that is because if we're requesting a previous defense attorney's files, they're just going to claim privilege on everything, even though our specific subpoena excludes any privileged information. But again, that will hold up the case, getting the information that we need, the records that we need, and getting them to the medical provider to provide the report. So.
Great, thanks. And then, Ashleigh, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. When IMR was first implemented, we had a lot of clients that were missing deadlines because of how much extra work they had to take on with the same amount of staff, especially with COVID and everything. So Gemini got creative a little while back and created a simple two-step process that takes the burden off our clients and ensures the best chance of overturning denials. Can you walk us through a few tips to ensure records for IMR are provided to Maximus on time?
Sure. So like you had touched on, we do have an easy, simple two-step process. The start of that process is making sure that you have a completed IMR application and the UR denial paperwork that goes with that. If you don't send both of those documents to Maximus and one of them's not complete for some reason, they will automatically deny it, and they'll send you a letter stating that your case was denied and it's not going to move any further. So that's the number one thing to pay attention to. The second thing is paying attention to timelines. So when you have a denial for a formulary dispute, which is medications being denied, you only have 10 days to file the application from that UR denial date. If you have a non-formulary denial, which is treatment-based, you have 30 days from that UR denial to file the application. I did speak with a contact at Maximus about a month ago, and they said that they've been a little bit more lenient with this just because of COVID. However, they are going to become more strict, and they are going to follow those timelines exactly. So you got to be careful with the timelines. Now, if you're using a provider to do this service for you, you don't want to wait to send that application or the UR denial paperwork, because that gives us enough time to start getting those records and obtaining the records that you want Maximus to review for your case. Once the application is actually filed, then you're going to get what's called a notice of assignment. And that's just Maximus letting you know that your case has now been assigned and it's been accepted. Once you get that, that's the second step, sending that piece of paper over to your provider. And then that allows them to then upload whatever records, they have on file to Maximus for review. We personally follow DIR's recommendation of sending 6 months of medical history for the same applicant to Maximus. So we automatically will do that for you. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to tell us or anything. We automatically do that. And then just another thing to note is we're the ones checking the timelines on the application being filed timely. We're obtaining the records, and then we're sending that information over to Maximus. So all that burden should be taken off your plate, and you don't have to worry about any of that. One last thing that we do as well is we follow the fee schedule when it comes to billing. So we will only ever bill for one set of records sent to Maximus, even if for some reason that applicant might have 10 sets of medical records sent over. We only bill the one time. So your law office should never have to deal with any kind of unnecessary objections. that's a couple tips.
Good, I appreciate it. So I do have a couple of questions here, and again, thank you all for going through this and answering the questions. I had a question from Stephen Pisano that's actually pretty timely and something that we've been talking about quite a bit. Records going to the AME, QME process has changed for attorneys recently. So I think he's asking what are we doing, or what should a law office be doing because of that change? Right, Mike, do you want to start to address this?
Sure. This only affects the QME. It doesn't, because an AME is completely different from the QME process. So there's a two-pronged thing. One thing that hasn't changed on this is the declaration that you are in compliance with 4062.3, which is basically saying you've provided records to whatever records you're sending to the QME. You've already sent those records to the opposing party, and you've complied with that labor code. The attestation is a page that just shows how many pages of records you're sending to the doctor. Ashleigh, do you want to talk about process change we just did with that? Okay.
Yeah, so as far as the attestation letter that it attests to how many pages are included in the records, we have now made it just an across the board automatic thing where if we're sending records as an additional set to any party, we're including a cover letter that has the page attestation to it. And that goes to all QMEs every time you need them sent.
So we're doing the attestation letter, but we are not doing the declaration because we can't say whether the law office has complied with the labor code. Is that correct?
Yes,
correct.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to make sure that we got that clear. And thank you for that question, Stephen. Like I said, it's very timely. So
it's gonna be interesting to see how it shakes out in the next 6 to 8 months. So.
Yep. And a question from Kaylin Sharp just came in. Does Gemini only service workers' comp firms or civil too? Again, a very timely question. And I think I'm gonna answer this two different ways. First of all, we mainly service workers' comp firms. That's what we've been doing for 17 years and mostly all on the applicant side. And that's where, our expertise is and our bread and butter is. We will be getting into a number of different services for civil come late this year, beginning of next year, including more service of process, skip tracing, records retrieval, as well as e-filing to the courts. So big changes coming in the beginning of next year. But we will do limited civil work right now. Again, it's not our bread and butter, but we will do some limited civil work. And I just talked to whoever your rep is on that, and they can help you out.
Yeah, we currently just to touch on that. We've been servicing work comp firms that also handle Social Security cases, PI cases. So we've been doing that for some time.
Yep. And like I said, we'll do some limited work in that area right now, but it's not our main part of our business.
Right.
Right. And then there's a question on here about rush orders, and if we request records on a rush, what's the estimate turnaround time on a rush? Ashleigh, do you want to talk just about how we fulfill orders in general?
Sure. So the way that we focus on just being able to sort all the requests that come into us is we look at what needed by date is placed on the request when you submit it. So if you need it, within 15 days, or you need it within 20, or whatever that is, that's how we prioritize everything that we do. Every single department, that's how they prioritize their work. So they're looking at, just across the board, all the requests that come in, what's needed the soonest, and then that's what we tackle first.
That's a great answer.
And just to note, our standard turnaround, we're always under 30 calendar days, always. Now, if you have a rush request and you're looking for a specific turnaround, I can't really answer that just because it's really based on when you need them. So if you needed them, like I said, you call us on a Friday and you need them on a Monday, we're going to do everything in our power to get that to you. So,
but like you said, with the location having 15 days,
yeah,
in order to, we have to have a location that's willing to cooperate in order to get those.
Right. I mean, 15 plus your 5 for mailing, so really 20. But I mean, we have contacts at different locations. So Kaiser is very strict on that timeline. They do have their own internal processes, so they're very strict. They know exactly what they have to comply with. However, we do have contacts where if it really was a tight situation and we needed to make a miracle happen, we'll do everything in our power to work with Kaiser on that.
Good deal. All right. That's, I think, all the questions that I had. And I think we covered all of the questions that are in the chat right now. So I'm going to give it just a couple of more seconds. I appreciate the time that everybody took out of their day to join us on this webinar. I'm hoping that, like I said, whether you use us or any other copy service, hopefully we gave you some things that you can do in your law office that will help you make sure that when you need those records, you have them when you need them. And that was the whole reason for doing this. So hopefully this accomplished that. I do want to thank also the folks on the panel for taking their time out to jump on and answer these questions. I know you've got lots of other things to do as well, so I appreciate you taking the time out.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. And if nobody's got anything else, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. So again, thank you everybody for joining, and I hope you see you on a future webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys.